All right, I'm not going to go off into great details about the budget anymore, about taxes. You've heard me rant about that. I want to talk to you about a good bill coming out of the House from the House Committee on Public Safety. It's Representative Goodman's bill, House Bill 1840. And I want to be positive this week. I want to talk to you about something good that might happen, instead of always playing defense about the nasty stuff that some of our colleagues are up to. This bill would bring Washington out of the rear of the pack into the middle of the pack of states that deal with domestic violence and the right of people to bear arms when these two come in conflict. Guys, typically guys, sometimes it's women, who are facing orders, protection orders, sometimes spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, situations, housemates occasionally. Domestic violence related orders. It could be a stalking order, it could be a DV order, and it could be a protection order generally. Usually it's DV. Where there has been either a threat or an actual injury to a spouse. In those situations, the right to bear arms, I believe, ought to give weight to the community's feeling of safety and security, and the people who do that kind of stuff ought not to be able to own guns. Sorry, I just don't think it's an appropriate use. I know it's a constitutional right, but when you commit an act of violence, I think temporarily at least, you give up that right. If you commit a felony, you give it up permanently. Why shouldn't you give it up when you commit an act of domestic violence shy of a felony, misdemeanor? Well, okay, the National Rifle Association is on to some of my colleagues. The Republicans who control the Senate are very responsive to the NRA. The current chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, my old committee, is Senator Mike Padden of Spokane, who has, I believe, an A+ rating with the NRA. The question that we have, and it's not yet been answered by Senator Padden, so don't go call him up yet, will he give House Bill 1840 a hearing and hopefully bring it to a vote and hopefully pass it, send it on to the floor? What 1840 does, this is Representative Goodman's bill, it prevents a person who is under a current order in a domestic violence situation from possessing firearms. He has a right, he or she has a right to get the gun back after a resolution of the case. There's due process. It requires a judicial finding that the person is an actual, credible threat. The judge conceivably may not check that box in a domestic violence case. It may be that the judge understands and believes that this is a one-off situation in this family, that there was a particular eruption over an event that's time limited. The husband or wife reacted violently, but it's not likely to happen again, not a credible threat continuing on in the future. But the majority of those cases, the person is a credible threat, and a judge ought to be able to say that in the order, and further to order that person to give up all weapons, temporarily, so long as the order is in play. When it's not in play, the person has a right to go back to the judge and get the guns back. Makes sense to me. The problem is we're talking about guns, and we're talking about the NRA. The NRA is not interested in whatever is good for the people of the state of Washington, for the wives, kids in these households, the neighbors, the police officers who might be called to respond. No, the NRA is not interested in the benefit of any of these people. They're interested in the benefit of manufacturers whom they represent. They'll tell you they represent hunters and sport shooters. No, they represent the manufacturers. Their job is to make sure that as maximum a number of guns are sold. Plus, we have the good old boy vote. I'm sorry, there are some guys for whom to be separated from their gun is like to be separated from part of their body, you know what I mean? I think they kind of feel like there's an element of physical invasion if you're talking about their gun. They want to have their gun messed with. That element is there, and that element, I think, has to be responded to by some of our legislators. Part of what we do around here is getting our constituents what they want, and I get that. Sometimes real leadership consists of not getting your constituents what they want and explaining to them exactly why. And I hope that some of our rural legislators are willing to turn to the guys, and it's mostly guys, in their district who rant and rave about their right to bear arms being God-given and unassailable, and it's constitutional, and you can't possibly regulate it. To explain to them that, I'm sorry, Bubba, but there are times when you do forfeit a right to bear arms because that's dangerous. Anyway, that's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the gun issues are decided the hard way. Thank you.